Thanks, Susan. All right, so welcome to Increasing Digital Literacy Success Rates for Students. I'm Carlin Miller-Gore. I'm an adult basic education and English language instructor at the Hub Center in St. Paul. And Danny, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, my name is Danny Brown. I'm the digital literacy coordinator with Literacy Minnesota. And Carlin and I got connected to each other through a grant called the Transitions Grant that had us teaching digital literacy content within the scope of Carlin's classes. So we'll tell you more about that as we go.
All right, so we wanted to just share with you a little bit about how and why we're presenting today. Basically, through our collaboration under the grant, we learned that there are some aspects of the model we were using that allowed us to address some common challenges to students successfully completing the North Star certificates. And we want to share that with you.
And one important thing that we should note before we get started, we're going to be discussing North Star. North Star, for those who are not yet familiar, is an online platform for learning, teaching, and assessing digital literacy skills. We'll have more information for you about that and a way to get trained up on North Star at the end in our resources slide. So we're interested in knowing how many of you have struggled with incorporating digital literacy into your instruction and also finding the time to proctor North Star tests for students. So this is just going to help us gauge who's in the audience. Susan, do you want to go ahead and start that poll? All right, everyone can take a minute to answer. I need to grab a quick notes sheet, so I will be right back.
And Carlin, just let me know when you want me to close the poll.
All right, we'll give it another 15 seconds or so.
All right, it looks like we are just about finished. So about 2/3 of you said that you've struggled with incorporating digital literacy into your class instruction, 67%. That sounds about right. And then the second question, I've struggled to find time to proctor North Star tests. Looks like, yep, it's somewhat even, but more people say yes. So thank you so much for sharing. And there are the results for those of you who want to see. I'll leave those up for a second.
All right, and just in the interest of time, we know this is a short presentation. We want to give you an opportunity to have your questions answered. And then also, we know as educators, we love to share resources. So we'll have Nick, I believe, is going to chat out the link to this Google shared Google document. And if you have questions that come up during our presentation, please post them there or any resources you feel would be helpful. And if you see someone's question and you know the answer, feel free to add a response to that too. And just checking to see if anybody, did that show up in the chat, the link?
Yep, it's there. We're ready to go.
Perfect, thank you.
All right, so we first wanted to walk you through our model and the key components of our model for teaching digital literacy in Carlin's classes. Then we're going to get into a little bit about the time breakdown. so that you can see how much time this is going to take if you'd like to implement it yourself. So our model was a collaboration, like I said, through a grant between Carlin, who's a course instructor, and me as a digital literacy coordinator. So we did something called a push-in model, and we did this in a customized way to integrate North Star digital literacy into the lessons. So I want to define customized, and I want to explain a little bit about push-in. So the push-in model is the opposite of pulling learners out of class. So whereas you might take someone out for special tutoring, I came into Carlin's class and assisted learners 1 to 2 hours a week with digital literacy content during her scheduled class time. We customized this approach to fit the learners specifically in Carlin's class by pre-testing them to see which skill areas they had mastered in a couple of different learning modules, and then which skills they could use some help building. So these 3 areas were computer basics, internet basics, and email basics for those who are curious, but you can do this with any of the North Star modules. So we had 4 sessions in total for push-in during regular class time. And then we also asked learners to sign up for proctored tests outside of class time every other week so that we could see the results of their learning and pre-test them on some new content. Also, learners were assigned North Star lessons to complete independently outside of class time.
Right, and this might look a little busy, but this is the rotation schedule that Danny and I came up with. This is an example of what it looked like over the summer in our Parapro teacher assistant training class. And so initially we would have the digital literacy coordinator come into class and if you notice there's an arrow here, everything on the right is what the proctor, the digital literacy coordinator, is responsible for. So complete an introduction in class to North Star, set up their accounts, and then proctor a pre-test. And so in this particular class, students have an assigned education assistant, or teaching assistant that they're emailing weekly. They have a mentor. So we started with the email assessment because they needed to use those skills right away. So, and then, that first week right away, students got their account. They took their first pretest and they were working on lessons. And then the following week, they would have that push-in, that customized lesson based on how they did on the pretest. And this particular session, we decided to actually offer testing every week. We found we were offering students an opportunity to test if they missed it or if they needed to retake it for some technical issue. So we ended up just offering that each week. So there was that rotation. We started with the email assessment, and then every other week we would introduce the next assessment. So basic computers, and then internet pretests. So it's a little busy, but it actually worked really well for us. And one thing to note about this schedule too is that this being an occupational certificate course, these were required assignments to complete the assessments and the lessons to earn, part of that to earn the certificate for the course.
So we had 2 different variations of this model. The first iteration was with the learners from Carlin's medical office prep class. And I should mention both of the classes were completely online. So these were all remote learners. So I was in charge of presenting North Star lessons. So they were 1 hour a week, or 3 90-minute sessions plus 1 90-minute review lesson, as well as basically online proctored tests that were also done remotely. We had 3 to 4 1-hour sessions every other week. So learners would sign up 4 times beforehand to let me know when they were available. And I had the ability to fit my schedule availability around when they were free to test. And so I would test 2 or 3 students at a time, and then sometimes test learners individually if they couldn't fit one of the time slots when another learner was available. And then Carlin and I collaborated on in-class instruction. So teaching the content to learners, it was helpful to have her in the class as she knew the learners more intimately. And then Carlin was the one who facilitated the online sign-up sheet and kind of helped people get into a time slot for testing.
And after that first session, we did change up the model a little bit. And there was another staff person at Literacy Minnesota, Christian, who's a program assistant. He was able to take on testing 2 afternoons a week for that proctoring role. And I'll just mention that as the instructor, my biggest challenge, like many of you responded in our poll, is time. And the fact that someone else was able to take on that proctoring role was huge in my ability to effectively integrate North Star into my class. And Danny being the content expert and having those push-in lessons was pretty amazing. So I guess the point of this is we wanted to mention that there are many different ways that you could do this and variations of this model.
So I told you that we would get into the time breakdown, and now we want to give you a clear picture as to what you are getting into when it comes to making the push-in model work. So for total testing time, we had about 1,155 minutes. So that came up to about 19.25 hours for doing all of the testing for all of the modules for all of the learners. And Carlin, what would you say the average between the 2 classes, the average number of learners was?
Oh, well, I know the medical office, we had 13. Mm-hmm. And the parapro, I believe we had 12. So,
okay. Yep. So for teaching time, we had about 4 hours of focused in-class push-in teaching time. So as you can see, the testing time far exceeds the teaching time. And we had the common challenge of figuring out how to fit in all of this proctoring to our schedules. So luckily I was able to be flexible, but we had a couple of questions that we addressed class by class. And we would recommend that if you take this model and want to move forward with it at your location, that you make a plan with your administration to answer the following questions, which are first, who will do the proctoring? Identify a person. Don't assume that there's 1 or 3 or however many people who can just do proctoring on the fly. How will proctoring be incorporated into that person or those person's other duties? And also, how will the proctor be compensated? So I was compensated for my time through the grant, but it didn't come to me through my regular salary. So take that to your administration and figure out those kinks, and hopefully everyone will be happy with the end result.
And I think we had some ideas too, right? If it wasn't the instructor, it could be.
Yes, that's right. So we had a program assistant help us with testing the second round. But if you have a volunteer who you know is reliable and who can be trained in on how to proctor the assessments, that person is a good idea, or a good bet too, for helping learners feel comfortable and confident with proctoring.
Thank you. I'm gonna just talk quickly about the before and after. I happen to have two medical office class examples. One from, when we went fully online with this class during the COVID, online time. And then recently working with Danny this winter. So ironically, we had 13 learners in each class. And I just want to point out that my initial focus of incorporating North Star was simply assigning independent lessons and then encouraging unproctored tests. That says lessons, but it should say unproctored tests. And the reason for that is we also offered basic computer classes at the Hub Center. And so I explained to students that I was going to encourage them to sign up for this other class where they would get that direct instruction and proctored assessments. But the time limitations that I had, I wasn't able to do that in the class. However, this winter working with Danny, with this new model, I was able to offer that as part of the class. And the difference between the success rate in those two classes is pretty dramatic. So, before, we had 13 students in the class, 0 students took proctor tests because I didn't offer it. About 6 students went on to a separate computer basics class and completed some proctored assessments. And then, some people took those tests unproctored as well. And what I noticed is that some of them took those tests repeatedly with the same results, not much progress. So it might have been a bit frustrating for them. Once adding that new model, working with Danny, 13 students completed some or all lessons. 13 students completed proctored tests for all 3 of those assessments we worked on. 10 of them passed all 3 of them in proctored assessments and earned certificates they could then add to their resume. 1 student passed 2 out of 3, and 2 students completed proctored assessments, didn't pass, but made progress each time. So pretty dramatic results with those 2 approaches.
Indeed. So we thought that we would delve in a little deeper and just ask the learners how they felt about taking on this push-in model into their class, and how they thought about digital literacy differently after having completed the course. So we asked them a couple of different questions, and they preferred more hands-on activities or having a teacher in the classroom, unsurprisingly. And they also preferred activities to gain proficiency in the assessments. So they liked things that were directly related to visible results. So after completing the North Star Digital Literacy course, this is us asking the learners this question. I learned how to apply basic computer skills. 90% of people said yes, and 10%, one person said mostly yes. So that's pretty good for the parapro class. So then on the next slide, we're going to compare that with the medical office prep class that also learned basic computer skills. You can see that it's just about the same, maybe like 9 out of 11 or something said that it helped them. And then 1 or 2 said mostly yes. So this is good feedback. So for the parapro class, we then asked, after completing the North Star Digital Literacy course, did you learn how to apply internet basic skills? And this one, people were a little bit divided on, but everyone was a mostly yes or a yes. So there's some room for improvement, but people are feeling more comfortable with internet basics than they did before. For the medical office prep class, it seems pretty similar. Turns out learning internet skills is hard if you've never done it before. So this isn't surprising. And we still have mostly yes and yes for 100% of the learners. We then asked the parapro class, after completing the North Star course, I learned how to apply email skills. And again, this is mostly yes and yes. And then if we compare that to medical office prep, we can see the same thing. It's still mostly yes and yes. So email skills are pretty important. So as Carlin mentioned, the learners were paired with education assistant or teaching assistant mentors at SPPS, St. Paul Public Schools. And they exchanged weekly emails in the parapro class. So as this was the first skill that they learned, and this is them rating, after the class, how they fared and how much they learned or the quality of what they learned. This is pretty good if it's saying that it helps them actually apply their email skills to emailing with another professional.
Danny, there is a question in the chat from Katrina asking if you would recommend this push-in model for, I'm not sure, she says ENL, but she might mean ESL, I'm not sure.
Oh, yes. So I can mention now, and sorry, we didn't mention this before. These were mostly, yes, ESL, ENL learners. So both of these groups had intermediate to high levels of English. So Carlin, would you say that everyone was at about a 4th grade reading level or above?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. And you could scaffold it down, definitely. Depending on your content. But yes, these were employment focused classes. So the expectation was to come in with sort of a higher level of employment related vocabulary and English skills. So speaking of which, the parapro class had a little bit more mixed results about whether the skills prepared them for employment. 1 person said no, 30% said 100% yes, and then the rest of the learners said mostly yes. And then if we compare that to the medical office prep learners, you'll see it's still mixed results. So we still had mostly yes and yes as the majority of the block. And then somewhat, there are a couple of people who said somewhat. Or at least 1 person who said somewhat. So we were surprised that after just a couple of weeks of study with the push-in model, this wasn't a rigorous digital literacy course. This was a come once a week and teach a specific concentrated bit of content approach. So we were surprised at the high number of people who said that they felt prepared for employment after this course. So we can go ahead. In summary, we had a lot of people say that the push-in lessons were their favorite part of the content in total. But a lot of people said that taking a North Star test or completing independent study were also very helpful. So back to that idea of either having somebody in front of you teaching you a new skill, or doing hands-on activities that could help with moving towards a certificate were the most enjoyed and helpful parts of the course.
And next, we'd like to continue to offer you some information about how the students felt about the class. So we do have some clips from an interview with a student who took both the Parapro and the medical office occupational courses this year. And so you'll hear from our student. And Danny, I think you were going to read the first one.
Sure, yes. So we asked, this is Hugh. We asked Hugh, you completed both the Parapro and medical office prep classes. Has learning digital literacy been important for you during these two classes? And if so, how?
Before, I didn't know how to use the computer. I don't want to look behind. If I want to apply for a job in medical field or in educational field, I have to have the knowledge about the basic computer, the basic internet.
Danny, I don't know, her audio is cutting out.
Help me to know about that. I think I am lucky because you combine digital literacy in these classes. I knew how to go to the website or to the link that you gave to students to do homework to practice. I did homework completely with computer skill learned. So I think it's very important for me.
Sorry, that quality was not as good. What I remember Hugh saying in summary is that she didn't know any computer skills beforehand, and was able to complete real world tasks after the course related to her employment and also to her within her social network.
And Danny, there was a question in the chat as well from Katrina asking, just to make sure I didn't miss anything, the push-in lessons were focused on the skills for improvement identified in the student's pre-test.
Yes, that's correct. And there is a guide at the end that I made shareable for everybody. It's a quick start guide on how to do the push-in model and how to use the North Star platform in order to use the results of assessments to put together a quality set of lessons.
And do we want to try the next video just to see if maybe that's a little better?
Before, I didn't know how.
Sorry. Danny, do you think it's okay to go on to the next one?
Yeah. And then I wonder if we just press play and don't go into the video itself.
Have you made sure on Zoom to share audio?
Oh.
Because I was wondering if it was playing and just picking up through your speakers, and that's why we weren't hearing the audio as clearly.
Okay. You want to tell me, let's see, what do I need to do here?
So on your sharing settings, when you go into click to share, there should be a little checkbox for share computer sound.
Okay. Share computer sound. Okay, we'll try that.
All right, so we asked her.
Thank you.
Yeah, we asked her whether learning computer skills in the medical office prep class helped her feel more confident when she then joined us in the parapro class. So she took both of the classes.
I think learning online is difficult. You try to explain and answer all of the questions that help students get the lesson really. I have learned and practiced in the webpage of North Star Digital Literacy many times. So when I took the PP class, I was more confident. I have learned again and I knew more and more about computer skills.
Was that better, the sound?
Yes, much better.
It was still a little bit quiet, but better than the other one.
Okay.
Yes.
Because I think learning on.
We then asked her to think about
I will recommend.
When she studied computer skills in class.
I will recommend.
Sorry.
It's okay. And basically reflect on whether she would recommend this approach to another student.
They should go to the webpage. I will recommend they should go to the webpage of North Star Digital Literacy to learn. There are many lessons and practicing in this web that help students understand and practice on computer. And I think they should join completely to the lessons that teachers taught in class because they are very helpful for students in class.
We asked her the next question, which was, what has learning new computer skills meant for you? Oops, one more.
Oh my goodness, I'm
There
sorry.
we go. You're okay.
I will recommend they should.
Okay. I'm
So
trying to, yeah, apologize. Go ahead.
That's okay. We asked, what has learning new computer skills meant for you now that class is finished?
After finishing these classes, I use email better. I know how to write an email rightly and professionally. I know using the computer, using the internet for searching something I need. I can create a document or a card on the computer by Microsoft Word. It's wonderful and I really like it. After finishing,
Okay.
All right. And then lastly, what advice does she have for teachers who want to teach digital literacy lessons in the future?
I would like to thank you very much to teachers who want to teach digital literacy lessons because you help the students to access the information technology era, and that helped the people have more opportunity in job and in the life. Yeah. Now with me, learning computer skills in person is easier than online. Yeah, because the teacher side is more easier. It is easier, yeah. But if a student cannot go to the class in person, they can get the class online, and they have to work harder than learning in person. I think so.
Go ahead and play that one, Carlin.
Before I learning digital literacy, I don't know anything about computer. But now after 2 classes, I know a little bit. But I think that helped me to use a computer and something I need, I can use a computer with my confidence.
All right, so we just have a couple minutes remaining. So Carlin and I want to say thank you for coming. And in terms of resources, we have a couple for you. As I mentioned earlier, I made a quick start push-in guide that you can use in order to find the time breakdowns and the sample schedule and some resources about how to navigate North Star to plan your lessons. So you can go ahead and if someone wants to put that link in the chat, otherwise we'll share these slides with you again. And then Carlin, you wanted to talk about the next one?
Oh yeah, just a reminder, this is the shared document we posted at the beginning of our class and our session today rather. And so we'll take a look at the questions and respond to those. But if anyone else has, yeah, again, if you know the answer to someone's question, feel free to respond as well. So thank you very much for attending today.
And finally, if you are interested in learning more about North Star, the training director for Literacy Minnesota and I put on a monthly Getting Started with North Star training. So you can find that on North Star's homepage, digitalliteracyassessment.org. It's at the bottom of the page, so you're going to have to scroll for a while, but you will see the next upcoming date and you'll be able to register for it in advance. So I hope to see some of you there. Thank you again so much for coming.
Thank you.
I want to say a big thank you to our ASL interpreters for handling the session for us. Always a pleasure to work with you. And I am going to stop the recording now.